So imagine you're sitting in a cafe in Rome or, Tokyo.
Or Buenos Aires, really anywhere.
Right, exactly. And the waiter walks up, smiles, and asks you this relatively simple question in the local language, and suddenly your brain just completely freezes.
Oh yeah, total panic mode.
You just panic, and it's so frustrating because, you've studied this language on one of those brightly colored apps for like 100 hours. You have a 7-day streak going.
But in that exact moment, you can't string together a single coherent sentence just to ask for the check.
It's incredibly embarrassing, and it leads to this super familiar cycle, right? You swear you're finally going to get fluent, you go really hard for a week, and then, well, life just gets in the way.
Yeah, you convince yourself you just don't have the time.
Yeah.
Or that unless you physically pack up and move to a foreign country to immerse yourself, it's just impossible.
Which is exactly what we are tearing into today. So for this deep dive, we're looking at some fascinating transcripts from a language learning show called English Decoded.
And we are extracting this highly practical, completely excuse-busting framework they call the daily English habit.
Yeah, and even though the source material specifically targets English learners, the underlying cognitive mechanics, they apply to literally any language you want to learn.
Absolutely. The bold claim here, and it really is a bold one, is that anyone can drastically improve their fluency entirely alone using just 15 minutes a day.
So our mission today is to unpack that. We're going to completely deconstruct that 15-minute window and figure out how to rewire your brain without a classroom.
Right, without a partner, and honestly, without relying on sheer willpower.
Let's actually tackle that 15-minute claim right out of the gate, though, because I'm highly skeptical, and I know a lot of people listening are too.
It sounds like a marketing gimmick, right?
It totally does, especially because you constantly hear people say, like, I already practice for 3 hours a day. I listen to Spanish podcasts on my commute. I leave French Netflix on while I clean.
Right.
So if 3 hours of that isn't making them fluent, how on earth does 15 minutes actually move the needle?
Because there is a profound biological difference between passive exposure and active practice. What you just described, the Netflix playing while you fold laundry, that is entirely passive.
So it doesn't count.
Not really.
Yeah.
Your brain is this highly efficient filter. If you aren't actively directing your attention toward that audio, your brain just classifies it as environmental noise.
It just tunes it out.
Literally tunes it out to conserve metabolic energy.
That makes me think of, it's like trying to learn to be a Michelin star chef just by standing in the middle of a busy restaurant while you eat a meal.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right, because sure, you're surrounded by food, you can hear pans clinking, you smell the garlic, but you aren't actually engaging with the process of cooking.
Exactly. Your brain isn't calculating temperatures or chopping techniques.
It's just hanging out in the environment.
And that's the exact neurological traps so many learners fall into. When a foreign language is just background sound, your brain isn't searching for meaning. It isn't trying to decode syntax.
So real learning takes focus.
Real neural adaptation requires highly focused attention. And that's exactly why 15 minutes isn't a gimmick. It's actually a biological sweet spot.
Because you can't focus for that long anyway.
Exactly. It's very difficult to maintain pure, undivided focus on a challenging task for an hour. But 15 minutes, that's just the time it takes to drink your morning coffee.
Or, the time you spend mindlessly scrolling on your phone in bed before you finally fall asleep.
We all have 15 minutes of dead time we can reclaim. And over weeks and months, 15 minutes of intense, active engagement will completely obliterate 3 hours of passive hearing.
Okay, I'm completely sold on the focus over duration thing, but what are we actually doing during that window? Because this source material breaks the habit down into the 5-5-5 method.
Right. 3 distinct blocks, 5 minutes each. And we start with the ears.
Block 1 is 5 minutes of focused listening. And they make a huge point here. Use really short content.
Do not pull up a 2-hour lecture.
No, absolutely not. You want a short YouTube video or maybe a tightly edited 5-minute podcast clip, but the real magic happens before you even press play, right?
Yes, you have to set a listening goal. You can't just sit back and let the foreign words wash over you like a warm bath. You have to ask yourself a highly specific question beforehand.
Like what?
So, say you click on a vlog about someone's morning routine in Berlin. Your question should be, what does this person do immediately after waking up?
Oh, I see. So you're hunting for it.
Exactly. When you give your brain a specific target, you engage the reticular activating system. You switch from passive reception into active hunting.
And because you're hunting, you naturally pay closer attention to context clues.
Right, which means you catch more vocabulary and actually absorb the grammar. The framework recommends listening to the clip twice. once to hunt for the answer, and a second time to just feel the natural rhythm of the language.
But wait, if I turn on a podcast in a language I barely know, even just for 5 minutes, I am just going to hear a terrifying wall of speed.
It can be overwhelming, yeah.
I won't catch a single thing. I'm just going to get frustrated and quit by Tuesday. So, can I use subtitles? Or is that considered cheating?
It is not cheating in the slightest.
Yeah.
Actually, leveraging subtitles or a transcript is one of the most effective ways to accelerate your comprehension.
Really? Because it feels like if I'm reading, my ears are just getting lazy.
Not if you're actively listening at the same time. What you're actually doing is forcing your brain to use dual sensory pathways.
Oh, combining the audio and the visual.
Exactly. You're simultaneously connecting the auditory sound of a word to its visual spelling. It gives you immediate real-time feedback and helps your brain instantly segment that wall of sound into individual words.
Which ties into that linguistics concept they talk about, right? Comprehensible input.
Yes, comprehensible input.
Let's break that down because it sounds like jargon you'd find in a dusty university syllabus.
It's basically the Goldilocks zone of learning. You want content that is slightly above your current level of understanding. The target is to comprehend about 80 to 90% of what you're hearing or reading.
Wait, 80 to 90%? That leaves a 10 to 20% gap of unknown words?
And that gap is the sweet spot. If you understand 100%, you aren't learning, you're just reviewing.
Right.
And if you only understand 30%, your brain panics and shuts down. But at 80 to 90%, your brain has enough surrounding context to actively predict and decode the missing pieces.
So that 10 to 20% friction is where the actual growth happens, and subtitles keep you tethered in that sweet spot so you don't just drown in the speed of native speech.
Precisely.
Okay, so that's the first 5 minutes. We're taking the language in through the ears, hunting for meaning, using subtitles. But here is a major flaw with just listening.
Okay, what's that?
You can get to a point where you understand a language almost perfectly, but the moment you open your mouth to order that coffee, your tongue just ties itself in absolute knots.
Oh, absolutely. Recognizing a word and physically producing it are two totally different neurological processes.
So how do we cross that bridge?
Well, this is the transition to the second block of our 15 minutes. And for most people, it's the most uncomfortable part. 5 minutes of speaking, completely alone.
Uncomfortable is an understatement. People will do almost anything to avoid speaking unless they have a tutor holding their hand.
It feels terribly risky.
It does. And because of that fear, learners end up just practicing in their heads. They have these perfectly fluid, eloquent conversations in their minds. But thinking in a foreign language is entirely safe.
Right.
The way I look at it, your mouth, like the vocal cords, the tongue, the lips, it's a muscle group. You cannot build physical muscle memory just by lying on your couch thinking about doing push-ups.
Oh, you really can't.
You have to get on the floor, sweat, and actually push your body weight up.
The biomechanics of speech entirely support that analogy. Speaking is a highly complex motor skill. When you learn a new language, you encounter phonemes, specific sounds, that literally do not exist in your native tongue.
So your facial muscles have never even moved that way before.
Exactly. Solo speaking, which researchers call self-talk or shadowing, forces your mouth to practice those awkward physical movements until they become fluid. And simultaneously, it forces your brain to practice assembling vocabulary quickly without a script.
The theory makes perfect sense, but practically, how do we do this without feeling completely unhinged? I mean, talking to the wall for 5 minutes sounds a little crazy.
The framework provides 3 specific methods for this solo time. Method 1 is describe your day. You essentially narrate your own basic actions out loud.
Like, I woke up at 6:30, I am making dark roast coffee.
I'm walking to the train. Exactly. The hidden brilliance of this is that you naturally internalize grammar through pattern recognition rather than rote memorization.
Oh, because you're constantly shifting tenses.
Right. You organically shift between the past tense for what you just did and the present continuous for what you're doing right now. You feel how the language operates practically, bypassing the textbook.
I love that. Method 2 is talk in the mirror. You stand there, maintain eye contact with yourself, and role play a scenario, like a job interview or arguing with a landlord or ordering a pastry.
Because communication is heavily visual. It involves facial expressions and posture.
Yeah.
The mirror gives you immediate visual feedback, which drastically builds your comfort level for when you face a real human.
But method 3 is easily my favorite. They call it the repeat and change game. I view this like playing with linguistic Legos.
It really is like that.
You start with a foundational simple sentence block. Let's say, I want to drink coffee. Then you actively swap out one single Lego brick, one word. So, I want to drink tea.
Right.
Then you change the subject block. She wants to buy tea.
This exercise forces cognitive flexibility. You teach your brain to rapidly swap out vocabulary while keeping a rigid grammatical structure intact. It builds a flexible web of language in your mind, so you can pivot mid-sentence in a real conversation without freezing.
But there is one non-negotiable rule for all three of these speaking methods, and it's huge. You absolutely cannot whisper.
Whispering completely negates the physical motor training. You aren't fully engaging your vocal cords. You have to speak at a normal conversational volume.
Listen, if your family or your roommates look at you like you've completely lost your mind because you're in the kitchen passionately talking to yourself about buying tea, just lock yourself in the bathroom.
The bathroom has great acoustics anyway.
Right. It might genuinely be the greatest language laboratory on earth.
It absolutely works. So we've covered 5 minutes of focused input and 5 minutes of physical speaking output. That brings us to the final block of the 5-5-5 method, practical reading and writing.
And the operative word there is practical. This is not the time to drag out a 5-pound grammar workbook and suffer through conjugation exercises.
No, the goal here is expressive application. If you choose to spend these 5 minutes writing, generate just 3 to 5 simple sentences about absolutely anything.
The weather, a frustrating email at work, how tired you are.
Exactly. And the most critical instruction, do not pause to look up every single word in a dictionary.
Which is incredibly hard for recovering perfectionists. But writing with confidence and flow is infinitely more valuable than writing with perfect accuracy. We have this deep-seated fear of making a grammatical mistake.
We really have to reframe how we view mistakes. In cognitive science, errors are literally how the brain calibrates. When you make a mistake and then realize it, your brain adjusts its internal predictive models.
But if you're paralyzed by the fear of choosing the wrong verb, you just stare at a blank page.
And you completely halt the mechanism of neuroplasticity.
Now, if writing from scratch feels too intimidating, you can swap it for 5 minutes of focused reading. They suggest children's books or sites like News and Levels, which rewrite global news using simple vocabulary.
Those are great, but the absolute most potent reading strategy here is to recycle your content. Think back to that short YouTube video or podcast clip from the first 5-minute listening block.
Yeah.
For this final reading block, you pull up the exact text transcript of that audio and read it.
Double dipping on the same content. Why is that biologically better than reading something brand new?
Because it perfectly leverages spaced repetition and myelination.
Okay, myelination, what's that?
Well, when you learn something new, your brain forms a fragile neural connection. Every time you revisit that exact same information in a different context, like hearing it and then 20 minutes later reading it, your brain coats that pathway in a fatty substance called myelin. The thicker the myelin sheath, the faster and more permanent the memory becomes. Seeing and hearing the exact same phrasing across mediums forces your brain to upgrade a word from short-term memory directly into deep, long-term storage.
All right, so that's the 15-minute engine. 5 listening, 5 speaking, 5 reading or writing. It's a super tight structure, but we have to address a massive elephant in the room here.
The vocabulary issue.
Yes, because a major reason people freeze up in that cafe isn't just lack of practice. It's a sheer lack of vocabulary. You feel like you simply do not have the raw materials to express your thoughts.
Right.
The framework has a strategy for this, but I'm going to push back on it hard because it frankly sounds ridiculous. They suggest learning just one new word a day.
It is a highly debated approach, yes.
One word. I mean, toddlers learn like 10 or 15 words a day. If I only learn one word a day, it's going to take me 5 years just to ask for directions. Why shouldn't I just fire up a digital flashcard app and memorize 20 words on my commute?
Because the psychology of adult language retention is completely different from a toddler's. A toddler is a blank slate. As an adult, your brain is already heavily mapped.
Okay.
When you use an app to memorize 20 disjointed words like apple, bicycle, democracy, you're prioritizing breadth over depth. You might ace the quiz on Monday, but because those words have no semantic anchoring, no personal context, your brain ruthlessly prunes those weak neural connections by Friday.
So I'll just forget 19 of them.
Exactly. Flashcards give you the illusion of progress, but no actual retention. 1 word a day equals 365 deeply understood, permanently integrated words a year.
Okay, but how do you get that depth?
Let's look at the example from the text. The word exhausted. First, you don't just passively read the definition. You learn the nuance. You understand it doesn't just mean slightly sleepy. It means your physical body and mental reserves are entirely depleted.
Right, you attach a rich meaning to it, but what's the physical action step?
You say it out loud 3 times. Really feel the physical friction of pronouncing that X and H sound. Then immediately write it down in a highly personal sentence.
So not a generic dictionary sentence.
No, something intimately true to your life, like, after dealing with my boss all day, I felt completely exhausted. And finally, you mandate that you use that word during your 5 minutes of solo speaking.
So it only becomes yours when it travels from the screen to your notebook to your internal thoughts and finally out of your mouth.
Precisely. You anchor the word to your own reality. But this brings us to the most critical juncture of this whole deep dive.
Uh-oh.
Having the perfect, scientifically backed 15-minute routine is utterly useless if you inevitably quit doing it by day 4.
Ah, yes. The dreaded day 4 drop-off, the graveyard of good intentions. We start strong on Monday, miss Thursday, and by Sunday, we've deleted the app entirely.
So if we want this to work, we have to address habit formation. How do we ensure this routine becomes as automatic as breathing? The answer is habit stacking.
This is a game changer. Basically, do not try to find new time in your day.
Exactly. The biggest mistake is saying, I am going to carve out 15 minutes at 3:30 p.m. every day to study. You will fail because your day is chaotic.
Right.
Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for willpower, gets depleted as the day goes on. Habit stacking bypasses willpower entirely. Instead of creating a new time slot, you attach these 5-minute blocks to existing, heavily myelinated daily triggers.
Things you already do every single day without fail. So you piggyback on your existing life. You say, I'm going to do my 5 minutes of goal-oriented listening while the coffee machine is brewing.
Yes, and I'm going to do my 5 minutes of reading transcripts while I eat my sandwich on a lunch break, and I'll do my 5 minutes of solo speaking in the mirror while I wash my face at night.
So the existing habit making coffee, washing your face, becomes the automatic trigger for the new language habit. You aren't relying on motivation, you're relying on gravity. You just fall into it.
Consistency always beats intensity. But even with a bulletproof habit stack, learners still fall into traps. They juggle 5 different apps, or they miss one day, feel guilty, and abandon the whole project. But the most paralyzing trap is waiting to feel ready.
The confidence paradox.
People constantly say, I will finally start speaking to native speakers when I'm more confident in my verb conjugations. But the psychology of confidence works in the exact opposite direction.
It's like standing on a beach, staring at a freezing cold ocean, and reading a textbook on thermodynamics to build up the confidence to jump in.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
You can read about the temperature all day, but you are never going to feel ready for the shock. You just have to sprint in, dive under the wave, shiver for a minute, and let your body biologically adapt to the cold.
You don't study the cold to get comfortable. You experience the cold to get comfortable. The confidence to speak a language does not arrive magically before you start practicing it. Confidence is the result of practice.
Jump in the cold water. I love that. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, the methodology drops a quick, lightning round of extra tips. Just a few secret behavioral weapons to keep you on track.
Let's run through them. First, actively record yourself speaking. Yes, it's incredibly uncomfortable to listen to your own voice struggling in a foreign language.
Oh, it's the worst.
But it is the only objective way to hear your actual progress month over month and catch repetitive pronunciation errors.
Makes sense. Second, maintain a dedicated physical vocabulary notebook. Just a small pocket notebook exclusively for your 1 word a day and your personal sentences. Writing by hand engages different cognitive pathways than typing.
Third, and this is truly fascinating, deliberately shift your internal monologue.
Like the voice in your head.
Exactly. Try to consciously flip that inner voice into your target language for just 2 or 3 minutes while you're walking or driving. No. It's entirely invisible practice that forces you to think in the syntax of the new language.
And finally, you have to celebrate the small daily wins. Did you do your 15 minutes today while making coffee and washing your face? Acknowledge it out loud.
Because doing so triggers a small release of dopamine, which reinforces the habit loop. It creates a positive biochemical feedback loop that literally makes your brain crave doing the routine again tomorrow.
So, to pull all of these threads together, what this entire framework is really offering is liberation. It strips away all the elaborate excuses we hide behind. You do not need a perfect, quiet study environment.
No, you don't.
You don't need endless free time that you don't actually have. You don't even need to be in the same time zone as a native speaker.
All the tools for neurological adaptation are already at your disposal.
All you actually need is 15 minutes. You need the discipline of the 5-5-5 structure, 5 minutes of active listening, 5 minutes of bold solo speaking, and 5 minutes of practical reading or writing.
And the patience to deeply internalize just one new word a day.
And most importantly, you need the sheer willingness to look yourself in the mirror, open your mouth, and start speaking, fully embracing every awkward mistake along the way.
It radically reframes the entire process. It takes this impossible mountain and breaks it down into incredibly small, biologically manageable daily steps.
It makes fluency an inevitability rather than a pipe dream.
And if we step back, this raises a much larger, somewhat provocative question, something for you to deeply consider as you go about the rest of your day. We just spent this entire deep dive unpacking how habit stacking 15 minutes of practice can literally rewire your brain to master a language completely alone.
Yeah.
If that biological reality is true for language, what other massive, deeply intimidating life skills could you secretly master in the margins of your day just by reclaiming 15 minutes?